There's another one you don't want to hear. Frankly, if you like.
1, 2, 3, set, go.
Right now on the Power Chord Hour, whether you're listening on 107.9 WRFA right here in Jamestown or you're listening to the Power Chord Hour podcast, I am your host, Anthony Merchant, here with you with another episode, and I gotta say, it is nothing short of an absolute honor and pleasure right now. Today on the show, we have writer, professor, and punker himself, Mr. Greg Graffin of Bad Religion, and Greg is back with a brand new book. This time he's written a memoir, and the new book is called Punk Paradox, and by the time you hear this, it is out everywhere for your enjoyment, so let's talk books, music, and more with Greg. Greg, how are you?
Great. Thanks for that amazing introduction, but I didn't hear the roars of the in-studio audience clapping. So
I mean,
you don't have the Howard Stern engineers at your disposal, huh?
No, we don't. You know, WRFA does not have the Howard Stern budget, sadly. Though you're making me think that I might have to request that for future interviews. Yeah. I liked it.
All right.
So, I mean, let's start. I mean, again, the big thing right now is Punk Paradox, which I've had a chance to read a little bit of. Haven't finished it, but gotten a few chapters in and really enjoying it. Let's just start out from the beginning. I mean, how long has this, when did the idea for Punk Paradox start? The idea for writing a memoir? How long has this project been in the works for you?
Well, I just basically, like most musicians, I had 2 years to think about things because COVID took its toll and basically sidelined all musicians for 2 years. And I had written other books before this one, and I decided maybe it's time I revisit some of the history of Bad Religion. You know, we had recently celebrated our 40th year anniversary. And I thought maybe I could revisit some of this, given the fact that another book came out that sort of detailed the chronology of Bad Religion called Do What You Want. That book came out in 2020. It was written by Jim Ruland, a friend of the band. And that book had this really elaborate chronology where it just sort of told all the events of our history. But what was lacking, in my opinion, was sort of the more humanistic side of how it felt to go through those events. And so I chose a specific portion of that chronology, namely the years when my songwriting partner, Brett, left the band and then rejoined the band about 5 years later. And I wrote extensively on that period because I thought that, number one, it was an interesting part of my own life, but number two, the fans I thought would really enjoy seeing some of what was going on in Bad Religion during that time. That was the time when many fans discovered Bad Religion during that period, because that was when we went out on tour at the end of that period with Blink-182. And of course, Blink-182 was one of the biggest bands in the country at the time. They grew up on Bad Religion, and they took us out on tour.
I do have to tell you, I mean, and I was reading the book, like, I got probably the first 5 or 6 chapters in, and I did jump around a little, and I do have to tell you, I had quite a good laugh at, I believe it might be chapter 25 on the story of hearing Damn It on the radio. I won't give anything away if no one's read it. I had a really good laugh at that, I got to tell you. I was like, where is this going? And then I kept reading, and I'm like, oh, there we go. And I had quite a good laugh at that part.
Yeah, well, that the connection to NoFX, for those listeners who are knowledgeable, they will find that story unmistakable.
Yeah, I believe so, and I mean, again, fans of punk rock. This is a great book. I don't think I have to really tell anyone that, but I wanted to talk to you too, because I mean, yeah, this is far from your first book. I mean, you've definitely done more than enough writing in your life, but I mean, this, I feel like, normally it's more about like science, religion, or kind of things of that subject or topic. This one's a lot more personal. I mean, this is you kind of writing, I feel like, more personally of your life. Not that you haven't injected that in other books, but I mean, this one very much just you kind of, stating the facts and what has happened and with the band and your life and everything. Like, I was kind of interested in this. Like, did you find it more easy or more difficult when you're writing candidly about yourself and your own life and experience over, say, a book where you have a topic or a subject and, maybe you can inject your personal life. You can always choose how much or how little to throw in there. Is this style of writing, was it harder, easier doing it this way?
No, what's very difficult is to make your story relatable. Everyone can tell a story about themselves, but to make it relatable to a broad audience is difficult. So if you're only writing about things that you think you're so great about, like, it's very easy to get self-absorbed. But if you want to relate to people on a broad scale, you have to find common elements and really be true with your own experience. And remember, memory is flawed. It's not perfect. It's not a perfect snapshot of what happened. It's just what your senses, what lingers in your sensation that you can write about. And you have to find a way to turn those sensations into a common thread that the reader will find interesting. And that can be very challenging. And, for my own story, putting the family elements, which the first chapters are devoted to my upbringing before Bad Religion, and trying to relate that to the cultural elements that you find in punk music, the subculture of punk. When I was raised in a family before there was punk, like trying to make that relatable is very difficult. So. But I think it's interesting once the reader steps back and looks at what they just read. There is a story there that says, punk has always celebrated the outsider, and I think that's part of why the punk genre has so much persistence. That's why it's been around for so long, because ultimately we all are outsiders in many ways. And that's why I found so much comfort in the punk genre.
You were just kind of saying it too with writing something like a memoir and stuff. Like, it is memory and is going back and trying to remember things and everything the way they happen. Like, I've never written a memoir, but from an outsider perspective, that seems like the hardest part is getting things in like chronological order, making sure you remember them correctly and all that. Was that the biggest like hurdle or difficulty in writing a memoir, or was there anything else that kind of came up when you were writing it that you really didn't expect? Like, oh, I really, obviously you've written before, but like you really weren't expecting writing this one for it to be as difficult or challenging. Were there any hurdles like that while writing it?
No, the chronology I didn't get too mired in, because the chronology is, my memory is fairly good at chronology. But the hardest thing, as I said, was the relatable parts, making sure that it's interesting to the reader. And so I think that's what I struggled the most with.
I want to talk too. In those early, I love it because just right away in the book, you are talking about your early days and stuff. And it's like right from the get go, there's action. And it's so interesting for me. I was not there to see punk, back in the day like you were. And reading it, just, the hostility you got for being punk, the violence towards punk. You're just like walking down the street and things like that. You really paint like a really great picture in the book and everything, and really kind of puts you back there. But I was like wondering, do you like remember it all when things started to shift or people became less of a target for being punk? Like, did you kind of see that shift at all? Was there a change? Or, did that just kind of slowly over time, things maybe became more acceptable, just kind of slowly?
Yeah, I think I described that in the sense that, as you pointed out, that pivotal chapter when Blink-182 was on the radio, once the mainstream radio started playing bands we can include Green Day and The Offspring and those bands that really were mainstream. They all cited punk rock as like their biggest influence. And so I think that's when the culture started to recognize the value of punk. And the value was that the songs were great. These are just great songs. The music is great. It doesn't have anything to do with the anarchy and the rebellion and the fucking shit up. Oh, I can't say that. Sorry.
Oh, I can censor
it. It had less to do with the nihilism and the violence and way more to do with the great music. And the music itself made you think, it made you dance, and it made you excited to be part of that subculture. And that's when I felt it lifting the stigma of being, in a punk band.
Outside of punk rock, I mean, another great thing in the book is reading like your earliest musical exposures, which weren't punk rock. Obviously, like we were talking about too. I mean, punk didn't exist at that time. And like really seeing the artists you mentioned that had an impact growing up and, all those original ones for you and got you into music. So I'm like wondering, like decades later, like, do you still feel like you derive influence? Like I know you talked like Simon and Garfunkel, Roberta Flack, Johnny Cash, Stevie Wonder. I know you said the Jesus Christ Superstar soundtrack was huge for you. Like, do you still as a musician when you're writing now, can you still hear any of that early stuff influence you any ways? Do you feel like it still creeps into your music this far in, or, did those kind of stay as early influences for you?
No, those were incredibly influential because they were great. They were timeless classics, and that's still the stuff that motivates me today. That's not to say that other music hasn't come along since that time. It's also inspiring. But in terms of the earliest memories I have of what moves me emotionally, those are still very alive when I write a new song.
For you, I mean, again, like I know I keep talking about writing, but I mean, you do so much of it. I mean, you write lyrics, you write books, you do academic writing, like you do a whole lot of different writing. And like, I just wonder, like, do you feel like all of it comes from the same creative place? You have to put yourself in a different like mindset or headspace if you're writing a book versus if you're writing lyrics or something like that. Like, does the nature of what you're writing change kind of where you have to put yourself in your head, or is it all kind of the same thing? Is there just kind of a writing mode for you, and that's what works for everything you're doing?
Well, I mean, there are certain. It is a workman-like craft to write a song. It's work involved in it. So there is like techniques. There are ways to build the song, and to start with a simple chord progression or maybe a good idea. But the cool thing about it is it's not written in stone. So sometimes you can be just motivated by what you're seeing or smelling at the time. And that can trigger a completely new approach to a song. So I wouldn't say that it's, it's a free-for-all, but it is, making music is something that you have to remain open-minded when you're writing, because otherwise it's just a formula. And that is something that I think the fans can recognize.
Do you ever find it difficult, like jumping from one another, like the style of writing you're doing? Like, so per se, you're writing lyrics, you're in lyric writing mode, you're doing Bad Religion stuff. Do you find it hard to then jump over and try to write, maybe try to write a couple, chapters for a book or anything like that? Or is that not hard to kind of jump back and forth on what you're working on?
No, definitely. I have to stay in one mode and complete the project. It gets really disheveled if I try to jump back and forth. So there will be entire months that I only devote to songwriting, or entire months that I devote to academic work. And that's just the part of the juggling act that when you're multitasking professionally, you can't do it on a day-to-day basis. It takes large chunks of time.
I was thinking about this too, like when it I don't know, like when you've kind of stepped away for a while, when you haven't written lyrics for a while, or you haven't worked on a book. Like I know this is your first book in a while. Like, do you notice if one is harder than the other to get back to if you haven't done it in a while? Meaning, like, is there more rust to shake off for if you haven't written a book per se for a while and you're going back to writing versus, if it's been a while since you wrote lyrics and it's time to get back on? Is one more difficult than other to kind of get back in the groove of things for you?
Yeah, occasionally it can be that way with songs or books. But I can say that this book, I didn't feel that constrained. It wasn't a difficult book to write. My last one, Population Wars, was a more difficult book to write. And, I have the same feeling about certain songs. Some songs were really easy, and some songs I struggled with for literally months.
Are you someone like with songs too, like, can you tell pretty early on if it's time to abandon ship or if it's worth salvaging? Can you tell pretty early on in the song if it's worth your time, or does it kind of take a while to realize, like, this is something we should keep going on? You know what I mean by that?
Oh yeah, no. There's times that I've written large amounts of lyrics and recorded music that'll never see the light of day. You come to a point where you realize this is not going to cut it. So it ends up on the scrap heap.
Are you, and I'm always interested in this, and again, like, you write all the time. Sometimes people will say, like, just write no matter what. It doesn't matter if it's good or not. Just keep that, like, keep that part of your brain stimulated or whatever. I mean, do you kind of do that yourself? Are you someone who it's important to try to write all the time, whether or not it's actually good or not? I mean, do you find yourself doing that almost just an exercise to keep yourself fresh?
No. I'm very fortunate to be part of a songwriting team. So me and Brett share ideas all the time. We've evolved ways of telling each other that's not going to cut it.
I mean, actually, like, if you wouldn't mind talking about that for a second too. I mean, obviously you guys are a great songwriting team. I'm sure everyone listening to this can agree. You've put out some damn fine songs you've written together. What do you, if you had to look at it, maybe it's hard because you're one of the people doing it, but I mean, what would you credit as to why you and Brett work so well? Why songwriting seems to work well with you? Because some people can. It seems like there's certain artists who, they don't work well with others. They don't have that songwriting partner. They got to work by themselves. But you two together, it seems to work. I mean, is there anything that you would credit to that?
I don't, maybe because we grew up together. I mean, that we met each other when we were teenagers, and that probably has a lot to do with it. But I don't know. We did, there's a mutual respect that we developed, and if you respect your friends, great things can happen.
Greg, just to kind of like let people know, I know we gotta finish this up here. But as we start approaching 2023, I mean, anything planned in the near future for Bad Religion that you can talk about?
Well, next year, we're going to be playing some big shows. We're going to Australia. We're going to Japan. And we're putting together our schedule of festival shows in the United States, too. So it's a little bit early to talk about them, but we're definitely going to be active next year.
Awesome. Well, I mean, Greg, again, total honor to get to talk to you. People listening to this, Punk Paradox is out now. And I mean, is there anything else you got going on right now, or anything else we should let people know before I let you go?
Nope. Just, look for me when I cross the Desi and Lucy Bridge.
I cannot tell you how happy that makes me that you know Jamestown, New York. I am Anthony Merchant, talking to Greg Graffin of Bad Religion, and his brand new book, Punk Paradox, is out now. If you're listening to the radio show, play a bunch of Bad Religion right now. If you're listening to the podcast, stay tuned. You're listening to the Power Chord Hour. Holy shit. And with that, I can say I have interviewed Mr. Greg Graffin of Bad Religion. I hope you enjoyed that one. I cannot tell you how insanely cool that was. I honestly, when I reached out to do that interview, I mean, I'm realistic about the size of the Power Chord Hour. We're not like a huge show. No, every now and then we will get though some people who, I mean, I've had a few guests throughout the years where I go, oh my God, I still can't believe I pulled that. But Greg is in that realm. But I was so excited when I found out I'd be interviewing him, and was just so stoked on it. And really, really fun getting to talk to Greg Graffin. That was really cool. And he was doing a little press tour. I know the interview is on the shorter side for this show. It's always weird. Anytime I do an interview that's under like 30 minutes, I feel like I almost have to say something, just because we always do such more long form interviews on here. But Greg was doing a little press tour there for his book. So basically, normally you can tell when someone has one of those press tours kind of lined up, because our interviews will be a little more on the short side, and you'll see me kind of wrapping it up early on. Because trust me, I would have loved to talk to Greg Graffin much longer, but he was so cool. That's the other thing, is like getting to talk to somebody who you idolized. I mean, I've been listening to Greg's music since I was a teenager. I've been reading his book since I was a teenager, and was just absolutely amazing. The fact I get talked to him, and also on a really cool project, because I got to tell you, Punk Paradox, which if you're listening to this the day it comes out on Monday, it actually will be out tomorrow. But I've had a chance to read. I still have a good chunk of it I got to read. I got a copy of the book not too long before the interview, so I mean I didn't have time to read the whole thing front to back, but I got a good ways in, and then started kind of jumping around from a couple different chapters that I thought might be a good place to look up some stuff before the interview. Maybe some chapters that looked interesting where it's like, well, maybe I'll have some questions from there. But I got to tell you, one of the coolest things, and I knew that Greg lived kind of near Ithaca. I knew he kind of lived in that area. I mean, we're in Jamestown, New York, and I always have to tell people this, we're 90 minutes south of Buffalo. It's just one of those things. I mean, depending where you're listening to this, either you get it or not. I mean, if you live in a major city, you probably don't. But if you're somebody who either lives in a small town or a suburb of somewhere, you end up doing that thing where you're like, I live X amount, I live 30 minutes or 30 miles from St. Louis, or I live 90 minutes west of wherever, I mean, it's one of those things. And one of the coolest things I got to say, when Greg got on the phone, he saw my 716 area code and saw I was calling from Jamestown, and he was like, are you really in Jamestown? And he knew right away, and you just heard at the end of that, if you heard him say, watch me when I'm traveling over the Desi Lucy bridge, he's referencing a bridge. Lucille Ball, who's from Jamestown, there's a Lucy Desi bridge over Interstate 86 that goes right past Jamestown, and he knew the area, he knew Jamestown, and truly, including when he dropped that knowledge, when he referenced the bridge, I knew he actually knew where we were, which again, it's just so funny, because just I 9 times out of 10, when I'm interviewing someone and, they ask where I'm at or where the radio station's at and all that stuff, they don't know Jamestown. I mean, they'll know Buffalo, and they'll know the area a little better when I tell them that we're near Buffalo, but very rarely do I find someone who has, I've had a couple people who have performed here. I remember Tony Scalzo from Fastball said that they did do an acoustic show in Jamestown once. But yeah, we're just normally not a place that, people know right away where you're talking about, but it was so amazing that of all people, Greg Graffin did, because I kind of was because again, I knew he lived Ithaca's a good 3 hours from here, 3.5 hours. So he doesn't live terribly far away, but still, we're not a major city. We're on the smaller side, and I thought we were maybe too far away where he would even know. So I wasn't even going to ask him really about if he knew where I was. But I didn't have to. It was the first thing out of his mouth when we got on the phone. So I mean, so insanely cool to talk to him. But I cannot recommend Punk Paradox enough. And I got to tell you, when you get to the chapter with the NoFX and Blink-182 thing that I referenced in the interview, you'll be laughing your ass off like I was. It was one of the funniest things, and I love Blink-182, but the story that Greg has is just so good. It's just so funny. I love it. But the book is great. I mean, reading more about his life before Bad Religion and stuff, because he's talked about it in some of his other books. Like, he'll inject his personal life in some of his other books, but he's talking about like religion and science and stuff, and reading the memoir and just getting straight up, this is his life and this is the way he's done everything, is really good. And I was jumping around, but like he was talking about like sellout culture of the 90s and them signing to the major labels, and his divorce, and just all these different things throughout the years that I'm really excited to keep reading it. And it's a long book. It's like 300 something pages. So I'm excited to get into that. And I know I got to go back. I never did read that Bad Religion book that came out a couple years ago, and I got to go back and read that. But yeah, really cool. I mean, I don't got to tell you that. You're listening to this. You know how goddamn cool it is that I got to talk to Greg Graffin of Bad Religion. I'm smiling saying it's very cool. He goes in that category of people that I'm like, God damn, I can't believe I interviewed them. So that was very cool. I really enjoyed that. And our first Power Chord Hour interview since September. So I thought that was a pretty strong one to come back on. I know the last 2 episodes have been solo episodes, but I was like, this is quite a guest to get back on, which is funny too, because I got to tell you, when I got back, I was emailing a bunch of people trying to book guests to get it going again. And for a minute there, I really didn't seem to have people getting back to me. And then of all people to get back to me, whoever the booking agency, that handles all that stuff for Greg got back to me, and was not really expecting it. I was kind of like, well, I know he has a book coming out. I'll see, maybe there's a chance. And then wouldn't you know it, hey, here you go. You can talk to Greg. So yeah. Really cool there, and we will keep the momentum going with punk rock singing legends, because next week I'll be back with Blake Dahlia, and I did already record it, and really, really fun time talking to him. That one is longer. That one, I think we talked a good hour or so. So we'll have kind of a more long form interview for you next week. But Blake is up to a bunch as well too, and I really had a blast talking to him. He was really cool and really funny, and I think you'll enjoy that one. I mean, I feel like too, it's in the realm. I mean, if you enjoy Bad Religion, you probably enjoy the Dwarves. So we will be back next week with that one. But until then, go follow the podcast online. We're at Power Chord Hour on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Give us a follow, give us a like, all that good stuff if you would. What else? Please rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen to podcasts, wherever you're listening to this right now. And, powerchordhour@gmail.com. You can email me, whatever. Hit me up there. That is where you'll find me. And I always forget. Well, I don't always forget, but a lot of times I do. We do still have Power Chord Hour stickers. So hit me up, powerchordhour@gmail.com. They're absolutely free. I would love to send you some. In the show notes, if you'd like, it does help out a lot. If you would like to donate, we have a link to our PayPal and our Cash App. So if you'd like to send a few bucks our way, it does help out a lot. I got we got monthly fees and everything for this here pod, so I won't be getting filthy rich off your money, but you will help keep us afloat, which is greatly appreciated. And if you want to listen to the radio show, that is every Friday night on 107.9 WRFA in Jamestown, New York, a place that Greg Graffin knows. And I got to tell you all, too, when the interview was done, I did invite him. I did tell him, hey, WRFA's here in Jamestown, and if you're ever coming through and you need a studio or a station for something, it is all yours. I feel like everyone who works at WRFA would not be against having him in. So who knows? Maybe I would love to try to get him in at some point. I'll have to keep that in mind. Just maybe like Bad Religion is starting a tour, and I know he'll be going over the Lucy Desi Bridge and coming right through Jamestown. Maybe there'll be a way to lure him in to WRFA and get the legend that he is in studio. That would be very, very cool. But yeah, new radio shows every Friday night, 8 to midnight Eastern, PM Eastern. I guess you know that by midnight, though. I don't think I need to say midnight PM. And actually, that's AM. But anyway, 8 to midnight Eastern Standard Time every Friday night on 107.9 WRFA. And you can stream the station online. Just go to WRFALP.com and you'll see the listen button. And I always appreciate people. I appreciate people listening here in Jamestown, but I definitely appreciate people listening all over the world, including people in other time zones. That's, I realize too with the radio show that it's a little more, demanding of your time. With this, you can listen whenever you want. With the radio show, you got to listen Friday during, that 4-hour window. So I appreciate that. And we play a bunch of music. You know what? Actually, it's kind of cool. This week, I'm going to play No Control and Suffer, both front to back after the interview. And then a bunch of other music as well, a bunch of Bad Religion and a bunch of other stuff. I also celebrated last week on the radio show, since I knew we were having Greg on and Blag as well, since both of them Epitaph artists, or I guess the Dwarves formerly, but the Dwarves put out a few things on Epitaph. I did a all Epitaph Records playlist on the radio show last week. And that's the other thing too, actually, if you want to hear everything I played on that, you can go to Spotify, and I put up playlists every week from the radio show. So if you can't tune in, but you want to see what I play like 60 plus songs a week. Again, I have 4 hours, so I play a shit ton of music. But if you want to see what I play and listen to it, go to Spotify and search Power Chord Hour, and you'll find like hundreds of playlists there. I've been putting them up there for years now. And we've been at it for a very long time. But that is going to be it. The next time I am on here, actually, I will be a old-ass 30-year-old, actually. My birthday is coming up at the end of this week. That's the other thing. That's why you gotta donate to show costs, because my birthday is coming up. So don't be a greedy bastard. You can throw me a couple dollars. It's the least you can do. I just interviewed Greg Graffin for you. I did it. I did all the heavy lifting. All you did was listen to me interview Greg Graffin. You didn't even have to ask him any questions. So I think the least you could do is go donate a few dollars. But next week I will. I'll now be a 30-year-old. Actually, I'll have recorded it probably before my birthday, which is Sunday, because I'm probably not going to be recording a podcast on my birthday. I'll probably get that shit done while I'm still 29. So I don't know. I guess that's up to you in your opinion. It'll come out when I'm 30, but I'll probably record it before I'm 30. But anyway, however you look at it, I'll be back next week with Blag Dahlia of the Dwarves. We'll keep the punk rock legend guests going. And for the Power Chord Hour podcast, I'm Anthony Merchant. Thank you so much for listening.